We're going to be talking about Communique for Amazon Seller Central today. I'll be presenting along with Roxanne Brown from Professional Business Solutions for You. Say hello, Rox.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so things to remember for today's presentation. Use the Questions tab to submit questions or communicate problems. We will conduct a Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you're using audio through GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar for best results. Close Mail, Messenger, or any program which uses bandwidth. Today's presentation is being recorded. We'll probably have it up by later on this afternoon. And just to let you know, a few changes to our website here, but you can go to Communicate for Seller Central. There's a webinar link right here. As you can see, the part 1 is already posted. You'll be able to find today's webinar up here by this evening latest. Okay, so next item, a data disclaimer. What we're going to be looking at is real-world data. I mean, this is actual stuff that's going on with Amazon and merchants. However, we've obfuscated the data to some degree, so it's not, identifiable. So you won't be able to identify, where this comes from, but it's general Amazon sales, settlement, that sort of thing, and they are real-world issues that you could potentially see when you're selling on Amazon and settling orders. All right. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the dashboards, the settlements, reconciliation, account summary, and the accounting summary and the implications of those, orders, buyers, products, FBA, data sync, and some more. Be quite frank with you, we probably won't get to all of this. We're going to spend a lot of time on the settlements and the reconciliation and things of that nature because I think that's where the biggest bang for the buck is. But if we get a chance to hit some of those other areas, we certainly will talk about that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Rox. Rox, please.
All right, cool. Thanks, Tom, for inviting me, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So a little background here. My name is Roxanne Brown of Professional Business Solutions, and the website is consultingforqb.com. I've been a bookkeeper for 35-plus years and a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor since the inception of the program back in '99, and been working with e-commerce clients in particular since that '98, '99 timeframe. Not that I really want to date myself. But I'm always on the lookout for tools or programs that will make the accounting aspect of running an e-commerce business easier for my clients. As an e-commerce business owner, you face a lot of challenges. You're the jack of all trades. You're trying to manage everything from website design to pick, pack, and ship, customer service, inventory, and then, of course, your accounting. In the last couple of years, merchants selling on Amazon Seller Central, participating in Amazon FBA, which is fulfilled by Amazon if you're new to all the terms, or both, has been really, steadily increasing. A few years ago, people selling on the marketplaces was still a new concept, but the last 2 years, there's been a definite shift in our industry. If you're selling on any of the marketplaces, the profit margins tend to be very, very, very tight. And because of that, it's more important than ever to have the ability to analyze your data. The slimmer the profit margins, the more critical this becomes for you. You need as much insight as possible to understand what's selling and what's not, what's trending, what's your best and worst sellers. You need all this to stay competitive, and it certainly can be a challenge. And, again, the accounting side of things. So over the years, I've worked with a lot of merchants who've been cutting and pasting their orders into QuickBooks or Excel, or manually rekeying them in an attempt to, manage things. But when you get to a certain level of transactions, 10, 15 orders a day, this is really not feasible any longer. So it makes it really difficult for you to grow your business. And it's almost impossible, honestly, to stay on top of things. So I've also worked with merchants that relied solely on bank statements to book their revenue and expenses, or they download their settlement files, and they use a bunch of macros to try to, understand everything. Again, that may work for a little while, but at some point, it's just not going to cut it. And then the file formats change, and then there's all your macros and all your hard work. So, using any of those methods, it's going to be extremely difficult and time-consuming, and quite honestly, all but impossible to really understand your data. If you're booking your revenue just from bank statements, how do you keep up with your inventory and your selling trends, return ratios? Not to mention, do you know if you're getting paid for everything? How do you replenish your inventory at FBA or in-house inventory, either way? For anyone out there that's already selling on Amazon, I'm sure you've looked at the settlement and fulfillment files, at least once. And yep, they contain all these great details, but, they're not easy to understand or work with. That's that challenge has led to a lot of frustrating hours for me over the years. Just take into consideration that when Amazon pays you, it's all inclusive for that time frame. So if you're doing merchant fulfilled as well as Seller Central, you get one payment. It doesn't differentiate. The payouts are typically every 2 weeks. Now some merchants, yep, they're paid weekly or in rare cases daily. But again, that's going to mean higher volume. They pay out their payout batches. They start and they end on the same day. That's always fun. And then, your various fees, the ins and the outs, and the ins and the outs. So at the minimum, you need the ability to reconcile your orders against your payments. And, I'm not saying that Amazon makes mistakes on a regular basis, but it does happen. And then you have other factors at play. If you forget to upload your tracking numbers, what happens? Well, you don't get paid. How do you find that out? If you're a smaller merchant, you may catch it, but chances are you won't, especially if you're doing a higher volume. So pretty much every day or every week we get asked these questions. How do you reconcile Amazon accounts? How do I know I'm getting paid, when I'm supposed to get paid? How do I manage the business, track my products, so on. And so some of you may already be using QuickBooks or an order importer or an order manager or a combination of all of those to try to audit the numbers. But again, it's going to be a real challenge to reconcile the numbers against the Amazon files. The challenge is immense, but it's also necessary. So enter Communique for Seller Central, which has made me a very, very happy QuickBooks Pro Advisor. The happy dance has come into play a few times. So I'd asked Tom to develop a utility that would allow us to import the Amazon settlement and order files and do a quick reconciliation without pulling our hair out, without manipulating Excel files, macros, cutting, pasting, any of that stuff. Anything above that piece for me was going to be a bonus. So not only does this program reconcile the orders against the payments, and it highlights the discrepancies, which is what I'd requested, but it gives you the insight in all the other areas that I mentioned earlier. The bottom line is if the merchant doesn't have the ability to truly understand what's going on in their business and manage it accordingly, they can quickly go from being profitable to breaking even, or in worst case, losing money. And trust me, it doesn't take long, and I've seen it happen. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tom so we can dive into the program. And I'm sure everyone's going to have a few of those wow moments, like I did. So it's pretty cool. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Rox. Okay, so let's take a look at Communique for Seller Central. And let me give you a little background. Communique for Seller Central is a standalone program. It does not rely on any particular order management system. So it doesn't really matter which OMS you're using. The bottom line is that as long as you're selling on Amazon, whether it's Merchant Fulfilled or FBA, and you're getting settlements, you can use Communique for Seller Central. Now, a lot of you out there are familiar with our dashboards. This is the main page that the Communique for Seller Central comes to when you first start up. We've added this Settlements tab right here. And essentially what this Settlements tab does is it shows you each settlement you have. It goes back approximately 15 and plots your revenue, sales, deposits, fees, adjustments, and others. You can easily change and customize the chart, choose different styles, and you can even determine which values to look at. So it's really pretty simple and easy, but it kind of gives you a snapshot of the various different settlements and the various different types of fees and charges and revenue and things of that nature. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The top part of the ribbon bar contains the various different sections. The buyers, although you're not allowed to market to the buyers, it is interesting to find out who's buying and from when and where. That way you can spot, consumer trends and things of that nature. So we do include a buyer section for that. And naturally we have demographics and we have orders, products. If you want suppliers, we have an FBA section and then our settlements. And the settlement area is the area that we're going to put most of our focus today. What I will say is that if you look at this data right here on the screen, there's an awful lot of data. Not all of it comes from Amazon. We do provide a way for you to be able to import your products, suppliers, purchase orders, and shipping. You don't have to have all that information. As a matter of fact, you could just use Communique for Seller Central to process your settlement files, and you don't have to do anything else. The only thing is that if you don't bring in your orders, it's impossible to reconcile. However, if all you're interested in doing is looking at your settlements and looking at all the detail and being able to see the who, what, when, and where, so to speak, then you can do that. The next level would be to bring your orders in. I would bring them in first before I do settlements. And then that way you can match settlements against orders. And then beyond that, if you wanted to bring in products or suppliers or PO shipping, that just gives you more information you can use for things like gross margin, velocity sales, stocking, replenishment, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the settlements. And the first thing we're going to look at is the settlement feed, and essentially this is where you import your settlements. We already have some already imported, so we're not going to go through the process of importing a file. It can take a while for some of these. We don't have that much time. But we do give you a way to be able to import one file at a time if you want. Some of you are familiar with this. You've seen that before. And we also have a multi-file import, which we're not going to do right now. So, you know, the benefit being, obviously, if you only want to import your settlement files once every couple of weeks or something like that, you can grab them, throw them in a directory somewhere, you know, use the multi-file data feed, and then just process them all at the same time. Okay, so at this point, we're getting ready to go into the accounting summary, but I wanted to leave you with, let's see. Let's say, for example, well, I want to explain to you that you can actually use this particular data feed section to help reconcile some of your bank statements. All right, so let's take a look at this. Let's say, for example, you have a bank statement, and let's see when the deposit date, yeah, we got some in August. All right, so let's say your bank statement is from August 1st to August 31st. Let's see, deposit, there we go. So let's say you have a bank statement, and the statement dates August 1st, August 31st, and as you saw, I just put an ad hoc date range in there, so you can put whatever date range you want. Looking at this right here, there are 3 settlements that should show up as deposits to your bank account. The grand total down the bottom is $250,686, and you should have 3 separate deposits for these amounts right here, this field right here. This would be the deposit, excuse me, I'm sorry. This right here would be the deposit amount. So you should be able to see that on your bank statement. Now, bear in mind that, you know, there's time lag between the time Amazon sends the deposit out and your bank records it to your account, so you might have to have a 3 or 4 or 5 day leeway on either side. So this is one way that you can use the settlement feeds to be able to reconcile your bank statements. Okay, so let's move over to the accounting summary, and let me explain this particular report. One of the biggest complaints we've had over the years about Amazon is the fact that the way they do their start-end dates and their settlements, they often, most likely, span multiple accounting periods. You get a settlement for August, for example, and it'll have sales for August and sales for July, or I should say settlements for August and July. You get a settlement in September, you know, you'll have settlements in there from August. So, you know, it's very difficult using the settlement file and some of the other identifiers to be able to say, okay, well, what did we do last month? Well, the accounting summary solves that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, here, last month, I want a list of all transactions or settlements that we had for the month of August, essentially. So we're going to apply that, just 4,711. And so it doesn't matter what settlement settled in August. Any transaction, that's order, adjustment, or other transactions and charges will show up in this list, and that'll give you a bird's eye view of what settlements you had for that entire month. There you go. So it's broken out to 3 major sections, the top one being orders, the next one being adjustments, and then the last one being other. And these are basically sorted by date, so not necessarily by type. So whenever the transaction was posted to your settlement, that's the order it's in. And you can grab this column right here if you want, pull it over here, and now you can group by type. So we can see that under other, there are 50 transactions, and the net effect to your deposit is a plus $418.58. There are 4,711 orders with a sales net of $211,011.81. And then you have adjustments, which typically are refunds, customer refunds. They're not always customer refunds. Essentially what it boils down to is that if the adjustment has either an adjustment ID or an order ID, either one, it will go into adjustments because that's typically a customer refund. But if it's missing an adjustment ID, an order ID, and it says other transaction as a type, then it goes to the other column. And then basically what it boils down to is that adjustments go against orders for the most part. Other transactions are those that are charged to your settlement that are not tied to a specific order. You know, an example might be FBA storage fees. For those of you that run a pro merchant account, that'll be your subscription fee every month. And other charges like that go in the other section. As a matter of fact, we can open this and kind of take a look and see. Here's a good example.
Tom.
Huh?
Sort by description. That's actually my favorite. I've been using that.
Okay, there we go. So now we're in the other section. I just grabbed that column, brought it up here, so we're looking at all the various different descriptions in the other. So things like FBA inventory reimbursement, we'll get back to that in a minute, FBA inbound transportation fee, these are the various different descriptions that are part of the other transactions. So you can actually group by, as I've shown you here, type, go to description, and see what the various different charges, credits, debits, that sort of thing. So the other section, as I said to you, are things that are affecting your deposit, but they're not related to orders. And this right here is your FBA inventory reimbursement. Now you can actually see this description type in adjustments, and I'll explain to you what the difference is. Whenever you get an FBA inventory reimbursement in the other section, generally it relates to inventory that was either lost or damaged at the Amazon warehouse. In other words, it's not related to a sale, but they've taken responsibility for product loss or damage, and they're reimbursing you for it. Under the adjustment type, let's see, we don't have any of the FBA inventory reimbursements. However, if we did, then what that would mean is that that was a customer refund, and it came back to them damaged or unsellable, and Amazon has accepted responsibility for the customer return and reimburses you for the product. Now, Rox, if you want to jump in and explain what those two different things really mean from an accounting perspective.
Well, just in general, you know, the way people tend to do it, the way we've been doing it for years, when we look at those batch payouts, is you're taking the other, and for the most part that's going in just against fees. Bottom line is that's not always right. We found a lot of interesting stuff doing this project. You know, it may really need to reduce your cost of goods, or it may be a customer refund in the other section. You know, so it is order related in a sense. So there's a lot of different implications here when you start looking at it. Everybody's going to have their normal based on your setup. So once you get a little bit of insight, you can be able to see what you need to do with your books. You know, but you may be overstating revenue. I've seen this a lot where people, if you're in a state where you get taxed on gross sales, this can be a real issue, right? So you wouldn't want to be adding to sales when you really need to be, you know, reducing because they were giving you refunds back, fee refunds or product refunds, not necessarily, you know, customer sales related refunds.
Well, that's right. And this $857.57 is basically damaged goods. The total value of damaged goods, as you point out, should be charged against cost of goods, and it shouldn't be part of revenue because you shouldn't be paying tax on this. Is that correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So knowing what these various different fees are will help you to understand how you categorize them in your accounting. And that's what makes this accounting summary so powerful, is because we incorporate all the various different transaction types for the accounting period. So you're no longer having to sift through a bunch of different settlement files trying to figure out what transaction goes where, or you have some people that get involved in, you know, trying to project and put a reserve amount or whatever other term they want to use until the actual settlement comes in and they can go back and manually make those changes. That seems a bit convoluted, doesn't it, Rox?
Yeah, this way you kind of always know where you're at, what's in transit. You know, if you're not using anything else, maybe just selling on Amazon, you can take these numbers and book them into QuickBooks, you know, and know that you've got accurate numbers.
Right, because, I mean, this, you know, when you close out the month of August, I mean, this is it. And any other changes that come in will come in the subsequent settlement. So even if adjustments are made to sales in August or credits are given back for erroneous charges, that's going to show up in the next settlement in the next accounting period, and you make the changes accordingly. All right, so now that we've kind of talked about the settlement accounting summary and the benefits, I want to go over and talk about the order reconciliation. But before we do that, let's go back and look at the settlement fee. I want to point something out to you. we have put in here an auto-reconcile zero variances. What that means is that when the file comes in, the settlement file, it will look to your orders and see if the settlement and the order values match. If they do, it automatically reconciles it so that you don't have to bother with it anymore. The other option here is to add missing orders. From time to time, you might import your order file, and for some reason you're missing an order. An example might be particularly an FBA order. I mean, generally, if it's a merchant fulfilled order, you're probably not going to be missing that. But sometimes you might miss an FBA order. Well, if the order is in the settlement file but not in your orders table, this option will add it for you automatically. Now, I must stress to you that using the original order file is preferable, okay, because the settlement file is missing a lot of information like buyer data and other important key demographics like that, shipping address, shipping destination, that sort of thing, ship service. None of that information is available in the settlement file, but is available in the order file. But at any rate, this is a way to be able to get orders added in that were missing so that you can at least account for them on the order section. So let's go talk about reconciliation.
And one quick cool thing about that auto-reconcile while you're bringing that screen up,
Okay.
you know, for those of you out there that use QuickBooks and you pull stuff in and you reconcile, you know, your checkboxes both sides, this is so cool, especially if you're doing, you know, when you first get the program, you might want to do all year, you know, all 9 months or all this past 8 months. It'll pull everything in and automatically do your little checkboxes in here. So when you go to look at the data, you can look at just the discrepancies, like the work is done for you. I love that. I can't even tell you how much time that saves.
Yeah, and by default, when you bring this up in search, as you can see, this checkbox says ignore date, so we don't really care what range it's in. We only want those that have variances, and we only want those that are unreconciled. So basically, you're only focused in on the ones that you have a problem with. There you go. So we have literally, I don't know, 20 or 30,000 orders and settlements in here, and of those, we have 6 with a problem. So that's really pretty slick. So you feel very confident that the vast majority, I mean almost 90, 99% of the stuff that you've imported is good and bankable. But you do have some issues with 6 here, for example, and we're going to take a look at them. Now, we're going to run across a couple examples here, and I want to start off with one right here, okay? If you notice, you'll see that the order ID is the same, yet the settle ID is different. So let's take a peek at that one, okay? So we're looking at this settlement and that settlement, and we're seeing that there are discrepancies, but they're both the same order, and you wonder why. So let's look at products, for example. You're being paid for both of these, not the same settlement. I'll show that in a minute. And you have both of these listed here from the order section. What I did is a little right mouse click and compare it to orders because we did import the order files in, so we actually have the original order from Amazon in here, and now we're looking at the actual settlement. So if we look at and compare, for example, revenue, and we compare revenue, they're essentially the same. And if we come and try to understand why is it that you have 2 settlements in here, let's come over here and check the deposit date, and we'll take a look at that, and let's see this here. So we have one deposited on June 29th, the other one deposited July 6th, and what I will show you is simply this. If you look down here, you'll see that the only difference between these two is going to be the warehouse. And what I suspect happened here, basically, and this is an FBA order, by the way, AFN, Amazon Fulfillment Network, so essentially it's FBA. I'm assuming what happened here is that when they went to fill this order, they shipped out the one product first because they had it in stock, and then the other one was either in transit to the other warehouse or it wasn't prepared or ready to be sent from the other warehouse, and when it was shipped from the other warehouse. So what it looks like here is this. Amazon is doing partial settlements for FBA, meaning that if they ship an item out, they'll go ahead and post a settlement for you. If there's another item due to be shipped out on the same order, they won't pay you until that item ships, even though they paid you on the first item. So that could be a little bit of a problem or an issue when you're reconciling, because what will happen here originally is if we imported this settlement but not that, we would see basically a partial payment, not a full payment. And it would only be for one of the SKUs, not both. And if you import all your settlement files over the course of time and you happen to get both of these at the same time, you'll see a particular situation just like this. Okay?
This is a really big, important factor here because you're able to look at this data in a multitude of ways, right? Transaction-related, deposit-related, settled-related, whatever. When you get to the end of the year and you're getting ready for taxes, this can be significant for merchants, where you're recognizing how much do you want to recognize this year versus next year, and what is really in your receivables or should be your receivables, that Amazon still is holding, so to speak. So this can be a lot of dollar figures when you're looking at it that way over periods or years or what have you.
Okay, so let's go talk about a couple others. I think we pretty much covered this. Well, what I will also show you too is a transaction list. This here has every single charge, every little detail for this particular settlement. So you can actually filter by, like for example, fee types, and so the total fee is $15.15. Let me search here. I'll show you a little trick. Since they're split like this, what you can do is search by the order ID, and then what you're looking at here by fee type, all the totals of fees are $15.15. But since you have split payments here or settlements, you can't look at the individual ones, but you can look at the grand total down here. You can see the fees are $15.15. They match, and you can look at price types. 50-50, 50-50. They all match. And see if there are any other transactions? There are none. Other transactions are like goodwill, promotion, whatever. They're kind of random, especially with FBA. Generally speaking, fee types and price types are the most common, but we threw that little other in there, so in case there's a different type of transaction or charge outside the standard, you can filter by that. So let's go back to all fees. All right, so now that we've seen the reconciliation, all you have to do essentially is say, well, both of these have been paid, so you can come over here and reconcile it. We'll say today, and we just say reconcile or whatever term reconciled was a split settlement, and save it, and then we're going to do the same thing with the other one. Save it, and now we're going to go back and search. It's gone. So it's been reconciled.
Yay.
Yeah, and then I'll just pop over here real quick and look at the order section. We'll search for that. Oh, I guess I probably should have saved that order ID. All right. All right, so the next thing I want to show are a couple other screens. We have orders, missing settlements. And the idea behind that is to be able to give you a list of all orders that haven't been paid. I will switch to the screen. We're not going to run it because we're going to have a lot, and it's probably going to take too long for it to return. Anyways, it gives you the aging days here. So by default, you say, I want a list of everything that's older than 30. It'll give you a list of everything that's older than 30. And that gives you an opportunity to see what you haven't been paid, so that you can go and find out why you haven't got paid on that. Now, I will say to you that if you put 0 in here, it will give you a list of all orders not paid. Technically, that would be what's called your float, meaning that that's money you've earned, but it hasn't been paid to you yet. So you can actually use it that way, too. So although it's generally designed to show you what your aging is and what's not been paid and how long has it been since the order date came through, you can actually use it to figure out what your float is, what's still owed to you from Amazon.
This is an easy way to find if you haven't uploaded your tracking numbers, for instance, on the Amazon or Merchant Fulfill side. Get your tracking numbers uploaded so you get paid. You only have a certain amount of time to do that.
That's true. This is settlements missing orders. We don't have any here. But from time to time, what could happen is you get a settlement that posts in here, and there's no corresponding order. Now, if you use this option here, add missing orders, then you'll never have settlements missing orders. That only occurs when you don't click on that and then you settle. Then any settlement that you post in here that doesn't have a corresponding order will show up on that screen. Okay, so let's go over back to the order section. So I kind of gave you a brief glimpse of that. What I'm going to do is show you how you can filter a few things that might be interesting for you. Let's, for example, look at all orders that have been adjusted. And we're going to look at for those for last month. So all these orders here that we're looking at have adjustments. Down here is the data page, and we can open up the settlement info and the adjustment info and the reconciliation tab. Now let me explain to you what some of this stuff means. But when you import orders into Communique for Seller Central, we automatically calculate the fee so that you have a way of knowing what the potential fee might be and what your potential net deposit is going to be for that particular order. Now, what happens is that when we do that, your date and ID field are blank, so that means it hasn't been settled. So whenever that's missing, what it indicates is that the fee is an estimate, not an actual. But when you see the settlement ID and the settlement date, that means that fee is actual. We don't do any estimations for adjustments or reconciliation. That's done later on. So with this particular order, the settlement came in on August 5th, and on August 9th there was an adjustment. If we take a look and see, the revenue was $72.60. That's what was paid to you. This little area right here comes from the actual order. So the revenue on the settlement and revenue in the order match. These were the fees that you actually paid, and that's the net amount. And so the adjustment shows the revenue, what was deducted, $72.60, which matches your revenue here. The fees are $10.89. Well, you paid $13.46, but they only credited back $10.89, and then they charged you for the refund, which is $4.75, and then your net deduction from your settlement was $66.46, which gives you an adjusted revenue of minus $732. What that means is that when they when you shipped the order and they paid you, and then they had an adjustment, you're basically an additional $7.32 in the hole between not.
Because the margins are so slim on any of the marketplaces in general. We'll have merchants say, I'm less profitable, I don't understand, I'm doing double or triple the volume of last year. So shouldn't my P&L and balance sheet look a whole lot better? Well, this is kind of giving you an insight on why maybe it's not looking better. You could actually be selling more, but making less money.
Well, FBA in particular, if you're having a high rate of return with the FBA, the fact that this adjusted revenue, and what we did, we put this value in here to show you that if you take what was paid to you and then you look at what was adjusted and taken away, you're in a hole $7.32. You didn't even break even on this, all right? Let alone the cost of goods and labor and what else involved in the sale and then the return. This is an additional $7.32 off the top. So that really kind of puts you in the hole. And the ability to be able to look at this and get that kind of insight is critical. Because if you look at here, we'll take the adjusted amount, adjusted revenue. So what we're looking at here basically is that when you look at the adjustments here, it's an additional $1,789 above and beyond the order value. It's a lot of money just for this period.
And you can glean a lot of other things from here. You can start looking at what product, for instance. Maybe there's a particular SKU or set of SKUs that you think's doing well. You're selling a lot of them, and you don't really realize the return rate on them. Or maybe you've got a product that's getting damaged, for whatever reason, it always arrives damaged. Or maybe it's just if you do it to the West Coast or the East Coast. So, it gives you that insight as well, so you can kind of start just looking at the trends and maybe making some small changes that will give you a big return.
Yeah, and I moved to another order here. If you notice, this one right here has an adjusted amount of $2.57, which puts the adjusted revenue in a positive number, okay? But what this indicates is that in addition to the fees, let's look at the settlement, in addition to the fees that they originally charged, okay, they made an additional adjustment to your order. And that means that they charge you $2.57 more than the original fees. That's what this says right here. So you're looking at basically the original fees of $21.16. They made an adjustment to the order on 8/22, and they charge you an extra $2.57 for this. not exactly sure why they did this and why this wasn't included in the original, but you can keep an eye out for this kind of stuff. And let's look at the transactions over here. We don't have any. Okay. So at this point, what this tells you is that you got an extra charge for this. Now, if you go and look at your settlement, we look at the settlement, the accounting summary, I mean, it's almost impossible when you're looking at all these values together to be able to pick things out like that. So if you make an apples-to-apples comparison between settlements and orders, and you actually go over to orders, you can look at these details and spot some of these trends. So at this point, Rox, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we open it up to questions?
The other thing I wanted to point out is, I don't think you mentioned that you can put in a percentage for the cost of goods sold. So you guys are seeing like gross margin percentages and things on different screens. And in this particular case, I don't think we brought the products in, the actual cost of goods. You can do that, but if you don't, you can go ahead and just set a percentage here and say calculate, 25% or 50% of the sell cost as your cost of goods, so you can get an approximate, gross margin rate. And that's really quite helpful.
Well, as you can see, we're 36 minutes into the webinar, and there's really a lot of things that we could talk about. I wish we had time to do everything, but we will be having videos. Let me just show you here. We have our first one up here on dashboards. We'll be adding some more how-to videos and things like that. Plus, we do have a forum out here, all things Communique for Seller Central, and we do have a lot of content out here which you're free to go out and take a look at. We'll be posting more stuff over the course of time. So if you need to find out more information about Amazon, Communique for Seller Central, settlements, reconciliation, that sort of stuff, this is the place to go to. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Rox?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So let's talk about a roadmap here. We're contemplating adding in the ability to be able to generate purchase orders straight from Communique for Seller Central so that you can fill your warehouse in FBA. And also at some point adding in the ability to be able to reconcile supplier invoices. We will be coming out with Enterprise Edition, first quarter 2015. It'll be MS SQL Server compatible with enterprise level features. The current version is more of a desktop, but you can have multiple users or single users depending on how you want that configured. We'll be working on an auto sync for Amazon so that this will run in the background and automatically pull down your settlements and run all that in the background. And so all you can do is start Communique and go to reconciliation, and you'll have all the latest, greatest stuff there. And then we're thinking about, opening this up to other marketplaces and shopping carts, namely eBay, Newegg, Sears.com, other sites like that, so that you can bring those orders in and potentially be able to, reconcile those accounts and also use those for, your sales forecasting. All right. Next slide. Okay. Communique for Seller Central will be available September 6, 2014. Trial will be available, but with limited functionality. I mean, essentially, once you run it, especially with the settlements, I mean, you're going to know quickly whether or not this is right for you. So there's no point in going through the trouble of working with all that other data in your product suppliers, purchase orders, and shipping and tracking. Essentially, the orders and the settlements will definitely indicate to you whether or not this is something that you could benefit from. So the pricing, the standard license is $495 for single user, site license $795 for multi-users. There's no limit, meaning that if you get a site license, you can install it on as many computers as you want on your site, and then the enterprise license to be determined when it's available. All right, so to learn more, you're welcome to contact sales@altarian.com. You can visit our forum at communique.vbulletin.net, which we showed you a few moments ago. And of course, for accounting assistance, you're welcome to contact Rox at consulting4qb.com.
And anything QuickBooks related, we publish. I'm not an accountant, but I can help you get your accounting stuff situated, but mostly QuickBooks and such.
I know some of you folks out there are from other accounting firms or consultants. If you're interested in our resellers or referral program, please contact sales@altarian.com to learn more. And now we'll be glad to take all your questions.
Yeah, this is something that you can, obviously you want in your toolbox, so to speak, to be able to refer clients to when they're calling you up and trying to find what's the best solution for their environment. Or if you want to offer this as a service, you can do it, quite easily now and be able to feel confident in the numbers that you're giving back to the client.
All right, so the first question is, can you link to more than one Amazon account? Well, the answer is yes. Let me show you. We do have a market section right here, and you can define as many markets as you like. We put some defaults in here, but you can change it to whatever you want. For example, we can call this our company. And there you go. And so you can change to another one if you want, and we can call this one, let's see, we'll call this one, okay, our company. There you go. So to answer your question is you pretty much can add as many as you like, and they can be different companies. The key here, though, is that if you're doing merchant fulfilled and FBA, they are generally with the same account. So I generally wouldn't make a distinction between merchant fulfilled and FBA. I mean, you could if you wish, but I generally wouldn't recommend it. Essentially, these different market names are for either using the various different markets that Amazon has throughout the world, or if you have multiple markets within the U.S., that happens, although Amazon prefers that you have a single account. Sometimes when you buy another company or you start something up and do something different, you start with a new account, so that does happen. All right, so that answers your question, I believe.
And you can easily sort, if you want to see just merchant fulfilled versus Amazon fulfilled sales and fees, that's one of the filters, and it takes literally like 2 seconds. So you can see that breakdown.
All right, next question is, can we use it if we have 2 U.S. accounts? Yes, there's no limit on that. We don't, the country is only there, it's a descriptive, for descriptive purposes, so that when you look at that and say, for example, you're doing, Amazon Brazil or Amazon UK, then you can see that that's the country where that account is at. But you could do any number of accounts and make them all U.S. That's not, there's no limit to that. It's possible. Then another question is, how much does it cost? As we showed in the slide, we have, there we go. So the standard license for a single user is $4.95, and the site license is $7.95. For multi-user, there's no limit to the number of users you can have at the site, and then we haven't priced the Enterprise Edition yet. So that will be available. Now, next question, is that an annual cost? No, that's a one-time cost, and the maintenance releases for the .x are included. If we go to a new version, then that's an upgrade. Any other questions?
And feedback's important, because this is getting, if you watch the other webinar, there's a lot of things already that's kind of get added in, just as we're working with it and getting some additional feedback. So he's great at taking the feedback.
Well, you make a good point, Rox. I mean, basically, you folks out there are on the firing line every day, doing your business, and so you give us feedback on what works well for you and help derive the direction of where the product goes. So that's why we do listen to you, because it doesn't do any good if it works for us and doesn't work for you. Ultimately, it needs to work for you. So we need to find a way or figure out a way to make that happen. And then another question here, if you're already using Communique previously, well, this is a separate product different from any other Communique product. So there is no upgrade discount or anything like that. It's totally separate. So if you're using Communique for Stone Edge or Monsoon Pro or for Multi-Channel Order Manager, those products are totally separate and different than Communique for Seller Central. Are there any other questions? Was there anything else you wanted to add, Rox?
No, I think we're good. Okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining our webinar today. If you have any questions, you can send them to tech support, TECHSUPPORT @Altairion.com. That's ALTAIREON.com. Once again, thanks for joining our webinar. Y'all have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.